My dad abandoned me when I was 12 years old for his girlfriend, kicking me out of the house and saying she's more important than you. I was left to fend for myself, sleeping on friends' couches and struggling to survive. When I told him I was hurt, he just ignored me, saying you'll figure it out. My name is Maya Johnson and I'm 24 years old now, but this story starts when I was 12. That's when my father looked me dead in the eye and told me his girlfriend Vanessa was more important than I'd ever be. I remember the exact moment because I was wearing my favorite purple sweater, the one my mom bought me before she died 2 years earlier. Dad had been dating Vanessa for 6 months, and she'd been pushing him to choose his priorities. I didn't understand what that meant until I came home from school that Wednesday afternoon. Maya, we need to talk, Dad said, not even looking up from his phone. Vanessa stood behind him, arms crossed, wearing that smug smile I'd grown to hate. Pack your things. You're going to stay with your friend Keisha for a while. What? Why? My backpack slipped from my shoulder, hitting the floor with a thud. Vanessa and I need space to build our relationship. You're old enough to figure things out. The room spun. But this is my home. Mom's pictures are here, her jewelry box. Your mother is dead, Maya. I'm alive and I choose Vanessa. His words hit like ice water. She makes me happy in ways you never could. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice sickeningly sweet. Maybe this will teach you some independence, honey. I stared at my father. This man who used to read me bedtime stories, who taught me to ride a bike, who promised he'd never leave me after Mom died. In that moment, watching him choose a woman he'd known for 6 months over his own daughter, something inside me shattered. Dad, please. I'll stay out of your way, I promise. Go pack. Now. The next 3 hours were a blur of stuffing clothes into garbage bags while Vanessa watched from the doorway, making sure I didn't take anything valuable. She even made me leave behind Mom's necklace. That's expensive jewelry, sweetie. Too mature for a little girl. Keisha's mom, Mrs. Williams, opened her door to find me standing there with 2 trash bags and tears streaming down my face. Oh honey, what happened? I couldn't even form the words. How do you explain that your own father threw you away like yesterday's newspaper? Mrs. Williams called Dad immediately. I listened from the kitchen as her voice grew sharper. Michael, what do you mean figure it out? She's 12 years old. This is child abandonment. She's not my problem anymore, came his voice through the speaker. Vanessa and I are starting fresh. Mrs. Williams' face went pale. Michael, I've known you since high school. Your wife Sarah would be rolling in her grave. Don't you dare bring Sarah into this. Maya needs to learn the world doesn't revolve around her. That first night on Keisha's couch, I stared at the ceiling wondering what I'd done wrong. Was I too loud? Too needy? Did I remind him too much of Mom? The questions ate at me like poison. Keisha whispered from her bed, my mom says you can stay as long as you need. But I knew I couldn't stay forever. The Williams family was struggling enough without feeding an extra mouth. I was already eating into grocery money they didn't have. The next morning I called Dad one more time. Daddy, I'm sorry for whatever I did. Please let me come home. His response still haunts me. You'll figure it out, Maya. I did. After 2 weeks, Mrs. Williams sat me down with tears in her eyes. Baby, I wish I could keep you forever, but with my husband laid off and 3 kids. I understood. I was 12, but I understood survival. That's when I learned the art of couch surfing. Keisha's house Monday and Tuesday. Her cousin Tamara's place Wednesday and Thursday. Sometimes random classmates whose parents took pity on the poor abandoned girl. School became my sanctuary and my nightmare. During the day I could pretend everything was normal. But when kids complained about their parents being too strict or embarrassing, I wanted to scream. At least their parents cared enough to embarrass them. My grades plummeted. How could I focus on algebra when I didn't know where I'd sleep next week? My stomach growled constantly. I'd learned to save half my school lunch for dinner. One day my teacher Mrs. Wright kept me after class. Maya, what's going on at home? I almost told her everything. Almost. But I'd heard horror stories about foster care, and at least my current situation was familiar chaos. Just going through a rough patch, I mumbled. She studied my face, probably noting the dark circles under my eyes, the way my clothes hung loose because I'd lost weight. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I nodded, but trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. That night, sleeping on another stranger's couch, I made myself a promise. I would survive this. I would become strong enough that no one could ever abandon me again. I just didn't know how brutal that journey would be. 3 months in, I was staying with my classmate Jordan's family when the unthinkable happened. I ran into Dad and Vanessa at the grocery store. My heart hammered as I approached them in the cereal aisle. Maybe he'd missed me. Maybe he'd realized his mistake. Dad. My voice cracked like I was still that 12-year-old girl. He looked up from Vanessa's shopping list, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? But then Vanessa linked her arm through his possessively. "Oh, it's you," she said like I was an annoying telemarketer. "Michael, we need to get going. Remember, we have that dinner reservation." "Right." Dad's voice was cold, distant. "Maya, you look fine." Fine. I was wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation. My shoes had holes and I'd lost 15 pounds. But sure, I looked fine. "Dad, I've been staying with different families. I don't have anywhere permanent to live." The words tumbled out desperately. "Can't we just talk? Please." Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Michael, we discussed this. Moving forward, remember?" Dad straightened his shoulders like he was steeling himself. "Maya, you're old enough to handle your own problems. I'm building a new life now. But I'm your daughter. And I'm trying to be happy for the first time since your mother died." His words hit like a physical blow. "Vanessa makes me feel alive again. You just remind me of everything I lost." I stood there, 14 years old, watching my father choose his happiness over my basic survival. Vanessa actually smiled. This cruel, satisfied smile like she'd won some twisted competition. "Come on, baby," she purred, pulling him away. "Let's go celebrate our 6-month anniversary." They walked away, leaving me standing in the cereal aisle, finally understanding that I was truly alone. That night, I cried until there were no tears left. Then something inside me hardened into steel. If Dad wanted me to figure it out, fine. I would figure it out so well that I'd never need anyone again. I started working. Jordan's older brother Marcus knew someone who needed help cleaning office buildings at night. Under the table, cash only, no questions asked. I'd finish homework, catch a few hours of sleep, then slip out at midnight to mop floors and empty trash cans until dawn. The money wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time since Mom died, I had some control. Mrs. Wright noticed the change in me. How I'd gone from broken and desperate to focused and determined. "Maya, you seem different lately." "Just learning to adapt," I said, echoing Dad's favorite phrase about life lessons. By sophomore year, I'd saved enough to rent a tiny room from an elderly woman named Ms. McKinley. It wasn't much, barely bigger than a closet with a hot plate and mini fridge. But it was mine. No one could kick me out for loving someone more. The independence felt incredible and terrifying. I was 15, paying my own rent, buying my own food, making my own rules. Part of me was proud. Part of me grieved for the childhood I'd lost. I learned to budget every dollar, to study by streetlight when the electricity got cut off, to smile when guidance counselors asked about my guardian's signature on forms. I became an expert at forging Dad's signature. Sometimes I'd walk past our old house. Dad had moved Vanessa in within a month of throwing me out. I could see them through the kitchen window, laughing over dinner at the same table where Mom used to help me with homework. The sight should have broken me. Instead, it fueled me. Junior year brought unexpected opportunities. My economics teacher, Mr. Patterson, noticed my street-smart approach to class projects and recommended me for a scholarship program for students overcoming adversity. I almost laughed. Adversity was a gentle word for what I'd survived. The scholarship covered not just tuition but living expenses for college. For the first time in years, I saw a real future beyond just survival. I threw myself into applications, essays, extracurriculars. While other kids worried about prom dates, I was building a life that no one could take away from me. My 18th birthday came and went without a word from Dad. I celebrated by signing my first lease, a real apartment with my name on the contract. Walking through those empty rooms, I felt something I hadn't experienced since childhood: pride. College became my sanctuary. I majored in business with a minor in psychology, partly because I wanted to understand how someone could abandon their child, partly because I was determined to build something unshakable. I made real friends who didn't know my story. To them, I was just Maya, hardworking, independent, maybe a little guarded, but normal. The relief of being seen as more than the abandoned girl was intoxicating. But even as I built this new life, there was always an ache. Other students called their parents for advice, for money, for comfort. I had learned to be my own parent, but sometimes the weight of that responsibility felt crushing. During finals week sophomore year, I had a moment of weakness. I almost called Dad. My finger hovered over his number for 10 minutes before I deleted it entirely. I didn't need him anymore. I'd figured it out just like he wanted. Success followed success. I graduated summa cum laude, landed a marketing position at a growing tech company, and bought my first car with cash. By 22, I owned a beautiful apartment and had a savings account that would have made Dad proud, if he'd cared to notice. But life has a way of reminding you that no one stays on top forever. I was at my company's holiday party when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Something made me step outside to answer. Maya? It's your father. 6 years of silence, and those were his first words. Not, I'm sorry, or, I was wrong. Just claiming his title like he'd earned it. What do you want? My voice was ice cold. Vanessa and I are having some problems. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Thinking about me? How nice. The sarcasm dripped like venom. I've been thinking about you too. Specifically, how I survived sleeping in my car junior year because my latest couch situation fell through. Silence stretched between us. Maya, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk. What you did was attempted murder of my spirit. That's dramatic. Is it? Because I have therapist bills that say otherwise. I could hear him breathing heavily. I want to make things right. Why now, Dad? What's changed? Another pause. Then quietly, Vanessa's been talking to her ex-boyfriend again. I think she's going to leave me. And there was. He wasn't calling because he missed me or realized he'd been wrong. He was calling because his precious Vanessa was about to do to him what he'd done to me. Good, I said and hung up. Over the next month, Dad called 17 times. I know because I counted every voicemail before deleting them. But information has a way of reaching you anyway. My old friend Keisha called with updates she'd heard through our neighborhood network. Girl, your father is falling apart, she said during one of our coffee dates. Vanessa cleaned out their joint bank account and moved in with her ex, left him with all the bills and the mortgage. I stirred my latte, feeling nothing. Karma's a patient teacher. He's been asking about you. Mrs. Patterson from down the street said he came by asking if anyone knew how to reach you. Let me guess. Now that his meal ticket is gone, he remembers he has a daughter. Keisha studied my face. You're really not going to help him? Help him what? Learn a life lesson about consequences? Seems like he's figuring it out just fine on his own. But that night, alone in my apartment, I found myself staring at old photos of us. Dad pushing me on swings. Dad teaching me to change a tire. Dad crying at Mom's funeral, promising we'd always have each other. The little girl in those photos still loved her daddy. The woman I'd become knew better. My therapist, Dr. Kim, had spent years helping me process the abandonment. Forgiveness isn't about them, Maya. It's about freeing yourself. I am free, I'd always insisted. I'm free because I learned I can't depend on anyone but myself. But was I really free if I still flinched every time someone I cared about seemed distant? Was I free if I'd built walls so high that even healthy relationships felt threatening? Those questions haunted me as Dad's situation grew more desperate. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening. I was reviewing quarterly reports when someone pounded on my apartment door like the building was on fire. Through the peephole, I saw him, my father, soaked to the bone, holding a cardboard box. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in the 6 since I'd seen him. For a moment, I almost didn't open the door. Almost. Maya, thank God you're home. He pushed past me without invitation, water dripping onto my hardwood floors. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I know. I've been busy building the life you told me to figure out. He set the box down. I could see it contained old photos, some of Mom's jewelry, random keepsakes. I brought you some of your mother's things. I thought you might want them. My throat tightened. Mom's silver bracelet was right on top, the one Vanessa had deemed too mature for me 6 years ago. Why now? I asked. Dad collapsed into my chair like a broken marionette. She's gone, Maya. Vanessa took everything. The house, the savings, even the car. I'm staying in a motel room that costs $60 a night, and I'm down to my last 200. He looked up at me with eyes I remembered from childhood, desperate, pleading. You're my daughter. You have to help me. Those words, you have to help me, triggered something primal. The same entitlement that had let him abandon a 12-year-old was now demanding rescue from that same child, grown up. I have to. I repeated slowly. Family helps family, Maya. That's how it works. The audacity was breathtaking. I walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, taking my time. Let him sit with his discomfort. Let him feel what uncertainty feels like. You're right, Dad. Family should help family. I turned to face him and he relaxed slightly. So let me ask you something. Where was my family when I was sleeping in my car? Where was my family when I was eating one meal a day to save money for rent? His face crumpled. Maya, I was going through a difficult time. Difficult time? My voice rose. You were getting laid every night while your daughter was learning which public bathrooms stayed open latest so she could brush her teeth. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You chose not to know. The wine glass trembled in my hand. Do you have any idea what it's like to be 14 and have your period start at school with no money for supplies? Do you know what it's like to lie awake wondering if your own father ever loved you? Tears streamed down his face. Of course I loved you. I love you now. Love. I laughed bitterly. You loved the idea of being free more than you loved me. You loved Vanessa's body more than you loved your own child. Maya, please. I know I messed up, but I need. What you need, I interrupted, is to experience exactly what you put me through. You need to figure it out. He stood up, desperation making him bold. I'm your father. I raised you. No, you didn't. You abandoned me to raise myself. Mrs. Williams raised me. Ms. McKinley raised me. Random strangers showed me more parental love than you ever did. I made mistakes, but... Mistakes. The word exploded out of me. Mistakes are human. What you did was inhuman. Dad started pacing my living room like a caged animal. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Vanessa threatened to leave if I didn't prove my commitment. So you proved it by throwing away your daughter? She said you reminded me too much of your mother, that I'd never move on with you around. His voice broke. I thought if I could just be happy again, maybe we could rebuild later. The confession hit me like a sledgehammer. He'd known exactly what he was doing. This wasn't some moment of weakness or poor judgment. He'd calculated the cost of his happiness and decided I was expendable. Later. I whispered. You thought you could just shelf me until it was convenient? I was grieving, Maya. Your mother's death nearly destroyed me. It destroyed me too. I screamed. But I was 12. I needed you more than ever, and you chose a woman you'd known 6 months over the daughter you'd raised for 12 years. He collapsed back into the chair. Vanessa said, she said you were trying to manipulate me, using grief to keep me from moving on. I was a grieving child who'd lost her mother and needed her father. My whole body shook. And you listened to that woman over your own instincts. She made me feel alive again. And I made you feel dead? Your own daughter made you feel dead. The words came out like broken glass. Do you know what that does to a kid's mind? Do you know how many nights I lay awake wondering what was so wrong with me that my own father couldn't stand to look at me? For the first time he seemed to truly see the damage he'd caused. His face went white. Why? I didn't think. No, you didn't think. You felt, and you chose those feelings over your child's life. Dad's voice became smaller, more pathetic. He played me, Maya. Vanessa never loved me. She was just using me until something better came along. And now you know how I felt. But you're my daughter. It's different. I stared at him, this broken man who'd once been my hero. Is it? Because when she told you to choose, you chose her. When life got hard, you threw me away. Now that she's thrown you away, you want me to clean up the mess. I was wrong, okay? I see that now. I need my daughter back. You don't have a daughter. The words came out calmer than I felt. You gave up that right when you told a 12-year-old to figure out survival on her own. He started crying then, deep, ugly sobs that might have moved me once. Maya, please. I have nothing left. No home, no money, no one who cares about me. You're all I have. I was all you had 6 years ago too. Remember what you told me then? He looked up with red, swollen eyes. You'll figure it out, I said, echoing his exact words back to him. Maya, don't do this. I'm begging you. Like I begged you. Like I cried and pleaded for my daddy to love me more than his girlfriend. I walked to my door and opened it. Here's the difference between us, Dad. When you abandoned me, I still loved you. When I'm walking away from you, I feel nothing. You can't mean that. I looked at this man who'd shaped me into someone who could survive anything, including him. You taught me that people will choose themselves over you every single time. You taught me that love is conditional. You taught me that I can only count on myself. Those weren't the lessons I meant to teach. But they're the ones I learned. Dad grabbed my arm as I held the door open. Maya, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was selfish and stupid, and I destroyed the most important thing in my life. I looked down at his hand on my arm. The same hands that used to braid my hair, help with homework, tuck me in at night. Now they just felt like a stranger's touch. You're right. You were selfish. You were stupid. And you did destroy something important. I gently removed his hand. But here's what you don't understand. You destroyed it so completely that it can never be rebuilt. Please don't say that. I spent 6 years learning to live without a father. I'm not going backwards now. He picked up his pathetic box of memories. What am I supposed to do? I almost said, call Vanessa, but even I wasn't that cruel. Instead, I gave him the same advice he'd given me. You'll figure it out. You're an adult. Start acting like one. This isn't fair. Fair. The word stopped me cold. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair. You experiencing exactly the same abandonment you put me through. You learning what it feels like when the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally decides you're not worth the effort. I stepped back into my apartment, my sanctuary, my proof that I could build a life without him. Maya, wait. Goodbye, Michael. I used his first name deliberately, stripping away the title he'd abandoned. I hope you figure it out. I closed the door on his sobs, on his pleas, on the broken man who'd once been my father. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there for 10 minutes before finally walking away. Later that night, I called my therapist. Dr. Kim, I think I'm ready to talk about forgiveness. Not forgiving him, forgiving myself for still loving the man who destroyed my childhood. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes love means protecting yourself from people who've proven they can't be trusted with your heart. I'd finally learned the difference. My friends are split on this. Half say I'm a hero, half say I was petty. What's the verdict from you guys? Did I handle this like an adult or not?